Welcome back on this glorious and amazing day to the Isaac Wolowik channel, where all clever and intellectual individuals like yourself join to go from good to better. And today we are off to our last episode of Deflection, of how we see it globally. We could talk a lot about it, but I'm just going to stick to one or two examples. The first example, let's go to 1860, when this whole separation in the United States happened. And in December of 1960, you have then the first state that just separates, and eventually throughout 1961, I believe till June, I forget, where you have finally all 11 states that separate, the southern states that separate from the United States of America, from the Union, from the other 23 states. What was this all about? Well, let's look at reality. In reality, the northern states said, you know what? Slavery is not something we want to expand, and actually eventually abolish slavery totally, because as we get older, as we get more mature, we start realizing what is right and what is wrong. So as they're having sort of this clash between the 23 northern states and finally the 11 southern states, the Confederacy, the 11 states don't talk about, no, we want slavery. And the northern states, the Union says, well, it's not really a good idea. They deflect. They deflect from the issue. They don't want to deal with it. It's uncomfortable. So they move to something else. And to avoid the real conversation, they say, we want to separate from our country. That's interfering with our rights. This is the United States of America. We have our personal rights, and you're intruding onto our personal rights, and therefore we will have our own country. And they have slowly more and more states that begin after December of 1960, one by one, joining the Union, not joining the Union, joining the 11 states. It slipped a word. I said it before, but it slipped. That's okay. What would have been the more mature argument would be is, we don't like the idea that our country is expanding this uncomfortable slavery trade. And the South could have said, yeah, we see what you're saying, but our whole agriculture, our whole business, our whole income is only through this, in my opinion, unjust, cruel, and just morally wrong practice of slavery. How could one human being control another human being? It's just wrong. I don't care how many people did it. I don't care how long they did it. Let's have a conversation. And the conversation would be, yes, slaves, no slaves, and let's work it out. Let's argue it out. And maybe the northern states will say, we're going to find a solution, a system where you could get what you want. You could get your business, and your fields could flourish, and yet still do the moral things. There's ways to work it out. But no, what we did instead is we deflected, and we created our own nation, our own 11 states, and we put up our own flag, and that flag is to show that we stand up for our rights. That is a perfect example of deflection. It hurts me so much when you have such a tiny country. Just, I believe, in 1860 was just a little bit over 31,000. Can you imagine? The tiny little Canada today is just over 40,000. And here you only had a tiny little country. And the numbers vary of how many people died in that civil war between, original numbers were closer to 620. Now they're looking even at higher than 700,000. That's just over 2% of a country because of deflection. Maybe if the conversation would be real, and the argument and the communication, maybe we could have worked it out. in a way that'll be win-win, that you guys in the southern states, including me here in Florida right now, would still benefit economically without using and abusing and not being unmoral to other amazing human beings that were created with the image of the Lord. We'll see you next week. Perhaps give an example of something in the present, and then we'll sign off finally after, 24 weeks? Well, not right now, it's 24 weeks. I thought the series will take 5 or 6 weeks, as usually it always goes way longer because there's so many details, but at least you saw deflection, all 4 elements, and as we are today in our 4th and last episode of Deflection. Until next week, please remember that you are way greater than you think you are.